So if you're waiting for revolutionary upgrades for the iPad like macOS support or better Magic keyboards, it's time to forget about that because Apple instead is focusing on thinner bezels, because clearly that's the biggest issue with the iPad right now. We recently heard about Apple using this fancy technology called LiPo on iPhone 15 Pro to shrink the bezels. Now you may be wondering, what does LiPo stand for? Well, thankfully, I totally memorized this and I'm not reading this off a teleprompter, but it stands for low injection pressure over molding. So yes, many big words that sound very high tech. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this. It would be appreciated. Now you may be asking, this video is about the iPad, right? Why are you talking about the iPhone? Well, hang on, because Gurman tells us this exact technology is going to be used on future iPads to shrink their bezels as well. Now of course, because Gurman's Gurman and loves to be as vague as possible, he does not tell us which exact iPad's getting this, but to be honest, it does not take a genius to work out the iPad Pros are likely first getting this, especially since we have actually heard about the next models getting OLEDs and also slightly larger panels. So it makes sense Apple is giving us bigger displays by shrinking the bezels instead of increasing the size of the iPads. I'm sure many would be pissed off if Apple made the Magic keyboards they got for $350 completely useless. There would be literal riots outside Apple's HQ, so yes, Apple's not going to change the dimensions anytime soon. They instead are going to shrink the bezels. And I know in the past I've said that Apple should not shrink bezels because you need somewhere to place your fingers when using an iPad, and that is something I still think is important. But I will say, guys, the 2017 iPad Pro has thinner side bezels than the current M2 iPad Pro, and I've had no issues with accidental touches. Plus palm rejection has improved, and also most Pro consumers have keyboards with the iPad Pro, so I can see why Apple's giving us slimmer bezels. Also, let's be honest guys, Apple's low-key running out of visual upgrades they can do on the iPads. Unlike the iPhone and the Mac, which have something poking into the display that of course they can eventually get rid of, the iPad Pro is already notchless and dynamic islandless. We hit peak iPad design in 2018, so shrinking the bezels is literally the only thing they can do at this point. I'm sure Apple's desperate to change something on these iPads so that the new iPads actually look like new iPads. Essentially, since 2020, every iPad Pro released looks identical from the outside, and how can you convince consumers to spend ridiculous amounts of cash on a new iPad when it looks exactly the same as the previous version? Anyways, when should we see this new iPad Pro release? Well, according to Korean source Select, we can expect new 11-inch and 13-inch iPad Pros with OLEDs in the first quarter of 2024, and this lines up perfectly with the release schedule Apple's had with iPads for a while, because we roughly get a new model every 18 months, and considering the M2 released in October 2024, 18 months later should be
one eternity later.
March, April, around that time I think. Now what are the benefits to OLED compared to the existing mini LED panel on the 12.9-inch iPads? Well guys, it's basically an upgrade in every single department. Similar to iPhones, we could see increased brightness, higher contrast ratio, greater color accuracy, lower power consumption, because it should now be LTPO, since for those curious, the current iPad Pros only go down to 24Hz, but these fancy OLED models should offer true variable refresh rate by going all the way down to 1Hz. And yes, you're probably wondering, why should I care about this? And well, you should, because this will improve battery life. But more excitingly for me, as a fan of the smaller 11-inch size, I'm glad we're finally getting an upgrade for the display of this iPad after years of it being neglected and not getting the mini LED upgrades. It could also help differentiate the range, because right now the iPad Pro and Air basically have the same panels, with the only real difference being 120Hz, and so if the 11-inch had OLED and slimmer bezels, it would definitely help upsell consumers to the higher end iPads, and that's all Timothy cares about: money. Now the elect does say the specific type of display Apple's using is hybrid OLED, This basically gives you the best of both worlds. You get the strength that comes with a rigid panel, but also the thinness of a flexible panel, which is of course what the iPhone uses. And for those wondering, why can't Apple just chuck the flexible iPhone panels into the iPad? Well, that's because it could possibly crumple, and while nobody wants an iPad, you have to chuck in the bin after a year of use. So for longevity reasons, it makes sense to use hybrid OLEDs. In fact, I believe because of this technology, it does allow these iPads to get twice as bright, whilst offering 4 times the longevity, which is nothing to scoff at. Now, this all sounds great, but of course you might be wondering, is there going to be a price increase? Well, surprise, surprise, yes, that might be the case. Both Ross Young and the Elec are very sure we can expect these displays to be more expensive to manufacture for Apple suppliers, and so the current prediction is $1,500, $1,500 and $1,800 for the 11-inch and 13-inch respectively, which is ludicrous. Currently, Apple charges $799 and $1099 for both sizes, and I'll be honest guys, there is no way Apple gets away with these prices. Yes, I know there's blind Apple sheep who buy anything regardless of the price, but these prices basically bring the iPad Pros on par with MacBook Pros that can do so much more with a much more powerful OS. And so at the very most guys, I think they can only charge $100 to $150 more for these OLED panels. Also, I feel like we always hear about bad news regarding pricing of future products, but it never ends up being the case. The most recent example is the 15-inch MacBook Air, because a lot of reports were suggesting this would be something crazy like $1,500 or $1,600, but no, Apple surprised us and priced this way lower than expected. And yes, we are expecting the 15 Pros to be ridiculously expensive, but here's the thing guys, I don't think the iPad or even the Mac has the same loyal target audience the iPhone has. The iPhone is their flagship product and sells in much larger numbers, regardless of the price, whereas I'm pretty sure demand for both the iPad and the Mac has slowed down, and so Timothy's desperate to increase sales. Of course, for those outside the US like myself, we're going to be screwed either way, but at least for those in the US, I don't think the prices are gonna be as bad as rumors are predicting right now. Yes, Apple's starting to justify the Pro name in the iPad Pro by giving us more Pro features, like Final Cut for example, but no way are they gonna be able to justify a $500 increase, no matter how good the display is. Also, in the off chance this does end up being the case, I'm very sure the price will eventually come back down in the coming years. Samsung and LG Display plan to produce the initial batch, but we could see BOE join the gang. And yes, I know they have failed Apple's verification test many times and can be a little iffy as a supplier, but hey guys, people can change, and I'm hoping BOE can change and they can fix the issues they previously had and give Apple cheaper panels for these iPads. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.